Hello students, we will continue our discussion of Chapter 2 and talking about corruption. This is interesting information about the Corruption Perceptions Index. So this is something that you might want to include in your assignment and case report as well, showing the countries and how they score on the Corruption Perceptions Index. So low ranking, not corrupted. So Denmark number 1, Somalia last. Somalia would be most corrupted. There's an interesting article that came out just a couple months ago, just because of the whole COVID process. Basically, these researchers compared the country's coronavirus numbers to their perception index, because they saw that there were some countries that were either doing really well against the fight against COVID, or they were underreporting those values. So what these researchers did is that they looked at the countries, the corruption index for various countries, said that using Denmark or Sweden, one of those Scandinavian countries, as the example country, and basically looking at their COVID infectious rate and basically using that rate for the other countries that, in their opinion, were underreporting their numbers. And they did find that countries that were more corrupt were either, and they couldn't really say this, were either fighting really well against COVID, or they were drastically underreporting those numbers. So Canada, Bill S21. Let's back up one there. Corruption of Foreign Public Officials Act. We'll cover more of this in Chapter 4 when we talk about ethics, especially the difference between a bribe and a gift. But this bill probably will show up on the midterm exam. So just remember that it's Canada's act to fight against the corruption of public officials in Canada or officials visiting other nations. Oops. Let's go this way. So basically that covers gift giving and bribes, and does lay out some exceptions. So how can we protect ourselves against property theft, especially with intellectual property? So there are 3 different ways: patents, copyrights, and trademarks. Patents basically are exclusive rights to defend for a defined period to manufacture, use, or sale of that invention. Copyrights, legal rights of authors, composers, playwrights, artists, people that publish, disperse their work as they see fit. So you'd have that copyright protection. And trademarks, designs, names by which merchants or manufacturers designate and differentiate their products. So those are 3 ways in which we can protect against our intellectual property. The TRIPS agreement to basically oversee the enforcement of stricter intellectual property regulation, and we can look at some examples of software misuse and piracy hotspots, basically ranking China as the #1 culprit, United States number 2. Surprisingly high over there. Product safety, product liability. Laws set for the safety standards for producing, manufacturing various items. Product liability involves holding a firm and its officers responsible for product safety standards. Now, this is something that we may, in Canada and in the US, directors, managers are typically not imprisoned. They may be fined, but typically not imprisoned. In other parts of the world, in some countries, the directors, managers can be imprisoned for something that the business entity did with or without their okay. So that's something to look into. That could be significant legal risk, just in order to protect your directors and managers there in various countries. Some other determinants of economic development. You've covered some of this stuff in macroeconomics, but gross national income, total income of all your citizens of a country. The one that's even more significant, important than that is the purchasing power parity, triple P. Because the GNI can be misleading because it does not consider differences in the cost of living, so we adjust it using that purchasing power parity. How much money or how many goods in a typical common basket of goods and services can you actually buy with your income? So you can look at some examples really briefly. This is the GNI per capita. Australia, 2015 is about 60,000. The United States is about 56,000. When we look at purchasing price, Australia with their 60,000 income basically is able to purchase $45,000 worth of goods based on the cost of those items in that country. So having a high income or having a low income like in Uganda, it all depends how much you can buy with your income. So the purchasing price parity, there's various websites that you can go to and you'll be able to find data for your countries that you have chosen. Human Development Index, HDI. This is something also that you want to look at in terms of your first assignment and your case. So SEN emphasized basic health care, especially for children, and basic education, especially for women, and various other factors that are beyond the gross national income or other typical economic factors. So the big question is, yes, you might be making a lot of money in a country, but what is your standard of living? Are you able to enjoy being in that country, and other safety concerns and potential for just your happiness, more or less. So SEN and United Nations developed this Human Development Index. It measures those three things: life expectancy, education attainment, average incomes. And basically is a way, I think I have a website here we can look at. Yeah, let's go to this website. I'll put this website in the course package or the course outline on Blackboard. It's the human development data. So we can select different dimensions, and this is something that you might want to look at for your assignment, especially education. We'll come to that later on. This is one extremely very busy graph, but we can clear this. We can select various countries. We might want to use Canada as a good threshold, and basically selecting, other countries, just random. Canada, I believe, is this green level here, basically, and Australia slightly above it. This is education. We can look at some sub-factors as well. Expected years of schooling. Oops, and then we can select, I'll just select some random countries there. Canada's up here, so expected years of schooling dipped when things are going really good. coming back and looking at this. So pick some of those categories. You may need them for your assignment. I'll put that website online. So besides Human Development Index, other factors that play important here is innovation, entrepreneurship. So it's a country's economic development is a function of its economic and political systems. Economic freedom, generally associated with the market economy, creates greater incentives for innovation and entrepreneurship. And they seem to be the main drivers of a strong, healthy economy. So you need to have innovation, you need to have entrepreneurship. And generally that comes through that market economy. So for that, of course, as I said, you need that market economy, strong property rights, and a political system that supports that innovation and entrepreneurship. Some debate there. You can read through this information. Jeffrey Sachs mentioned how geography, education, and economic development kind of add and build upon or build a strong economic system. So basically he studied economic growth rates between 1965 and 1990, and he found some significant findings here. He found that landlocked countries grow more slowly than coastal economies. So that might be something you might want to consider. Being totally landlocked reduced a country's growth rate by 0.7% per year, and tropical countries grew more slowly than countries in temperate zones. So tropical countries generally a little more warmer, temperate zones more like Canada. So why not tropical? You'd think that tropical countries have longer growing seasons. You can basically live out on the beach. Basically what they found was generally you have more hostile climates, you have a higher rate of disease, and in some cases you have poor soil compared to the temperate zones. And one other finding that was quite interesting is that there would be a lower work requirement in some of those tropical areas compared to temperate areas like Canada. Big question to support this, or where would you rather be homeless? Winnipeg or Jamaica? You'd really have to find alternate means to survive in Winnipeg compared to Jamaica. Because of that, basically shows that if you don't work in those temperate zones, you don't survive. So there's a huge significant difference in the work requirement. So generally that's what supports their argument, is that those tropical countries, their economies grow more slowly than they do in those temperate zones. We can look at education. Higher growth rates, so that's something you might want to look at for in your first assignment, as well as education levels. And we'll stop there.